Today's episode of Market Talk is brought to you in part by Growmark FS. Keeping up on the latest in ag is a challenge to say the least, but there are experts nearby ready to help. You'll find them at your local FS. You can trust them to bring you customized agronomic grain and energy solutions born of the latest thinking. That's because FS specialists receive continuous training that keeps them current on the latest trends, practices, and technologies. So you get local expertise that's both exceptional and up to date. Visit fssystem.com to learn how FS is bringing you what's next. And good afternoon. Welcome into Market Talk on this Monday, November 15th. Thank you so much for joining us here once again today as we kick off a new week. I'm your host, Jesse Allen. Find us online, markettalkag.com. That's our home on the web. Find all of our streaming sources there and much more. It's all at markettalkag.com. We had a pretty mixed bag of trade today in grains and livestock. Livestock were mixed. While grains, we saw soybeans, bean meal higher once again. Corn chopped around. Chicago KC wheat higher, and we had a sell-off in spring wheat. So we got plenty to discuss today. And joining us here on the show, let's bring in Mike Miner with Professional Ag Marketing joining us here today. Mike, it's great to have you back on the show. How are you, sir?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Mike, appreciate the time. Let's dive right into this trade on Monday. You know, we got post report. We saw everything get factored in. We saw soybeans turn around with that lower yield number, and then we got to the end of last week, and bean meal kind of just took off. And I know there's some protein shortages being reported out there, Canada and some other places, and that's really given some fire to this soybean meal market, which has supported soybeans. And we saw more of that on the day Monday. Talk about what you're seeing there.
You know, the last 2 days have been, or last two trading sessions have been incredible for the soybean meal futures. Really off to a hot start to kick off this week, and really both of them, both soybeans and soybean meal, trading higher. Funds have been buying soybeans as a hedge against inflation for one, but the soybean meal that's jumped $62 from the October 13th low here. I mean, it's pushed above their key moving average resistance by a long ways. And part of that's on talk of reduced Chinese exports of lysine to the United States, and that's increased a huge demand for soybean meal. So that's been an interesting story here as of really late. But like I said, we're up 60 plus bucks since the October 13th low. So it's been building up to this, and we've really seen a nice reaction out of it. So we've had good support from that, and then also when we look at what we saw out of this morning's NOPA report, you know, the report came in at 184 million bushels there versus 181.9 expected, so a little bit bigger crush. So that was nice to see. It was just below the October 2020 mark, but hey, it was still the third highest monthly ever on record for the NOPA crush there. And the bad part about it is, you know, one thing that's not bullish out of this whole soybean argument is the NOPA bean oil stocks have really gone up along with it. So that'll be something to keep an eye on as we continue to see more development on the soybean meal front.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I was going to ask you about that. Just the divergence between bean oil, bean meal here today. It seems like bean meal's really taken over the
Mhm.
lead with this protein story, and you know, it's maybe given us a little breather in this whole renewable diesel talk, et cetera, et cetera. That was really
Yeah.
giving us some strength there for quite some time in the soy market.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see that renewable diesel market really the next 5 years. I'd say, you know, this is a ways out. It's not going to take over overnight. We've got to build an incredible infrastructure to support that, but the demand is there for it. And I think that marketplace has a lot of growing to do over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think people really need to get their flashlights on this and really look at it and really put just talk on it. You know, we need to mention it more and stuff like this and get the more common people talking about it and see where it can take us. You know, is this the new ethanol but for soybeans type of discussions that are floating around right now, and really get some experts on it to spread some knowledge.
Sure. Well, and we look at soybeans and we look here post report, we got that slightly lower yield estimate from USDA that gave us back momentum. We've been able to gain back quite a bit of what we lost leading up to the report. You know, and we talk about high input prices for corn going into 2022, and it just seems like this battle for acres is starting to shape up here. We're going to be talking a lot about it going through the holidays and into the first part of next year. I look where soybean prices are at right now, and in relation to corn, I would have to think that if I'm a producer, some general thoughts with marketing for soybeans, there's got to be a good opportunity to lock in at least a floor or get some sales started, especially as you go into that 2022 crop.
And it's tough. I mean, yeah, there is some wonderful opportunities out into 2022. It's just with inflation and all of these things, it can be difficult with this much volatility to really get guys to look at locking things in at this point. But there's opportunities out there if you look hard enough for sure on these 2022 on out further markets. And
Mhm. Well, on the corn side, I think in relation to that as well, we a lot of times, we hear guys they talk about rather than lock it in a good price, at 576 and a half on the board. I mean, 550 corn, whatever the case may be. They're like, well, I think it's got room to run. I'm going to wait and see if we get $7 corn, and then that doesn't happen. I mean, it almost feels like you look at these markets, Mike, and sometimes we really just have to put things in perspective when good prices are there. If we can reward ourselves, we should reward ourselves if we can, depending on the situation, of course.
yeah, I don't want to throw all our eggs in one basket, obviously, but I mean, if you've got 70% marketed, then yeah, let's see what the rest can run for here a little bit. We still might want to take advantage of any May, June opportunities or quick ship bushels in the future. I can totally see that. But one of the concerns I've had actually is soybean basis on these processors right now have continued to hold positive basis levels in this area in southwest Minnesota. How long are those going to hold on once Brazil is out of the market with exports? I'm taking advantage right now of basis opportunities in the soybean market, and I would like to see that get pushed a little bit harder. I think now is a good time to do that. And if you're bullish futures, that's another discussion. But I think basis wise, I think that deserves a really hard look at this point in time.
What are your thoughts on the corn market just in general? We're doing really well post report, kind of just
Mhm.
chopping around, it feels like, as we just kind of slowly grind our way higher. But I mean, I look at these prices, just sitting below $6 in some contracts here by a little ways. It just feels like this corn market doing its best to fight for acres going into next year, but also just some good prices here as we work into the back half of November.
Yeah, the last couple trading sessions, corn's actually been the quiet one, right? Kind of a change of pace. It seems like corn and soybeans are playing tag with one another, throwing the other one in the ring. It's like last week at the start, corn was like, all right, it's my turn. Now beans kind of tagged in and they're like, all right, my turn. So we're going to try to run this thing higher. Been kind of interesting that way with how the two have coincided with one another. You said the fight for acres. We saw some more flash sales to Mexico this morning for corn. Export inspections came in a little higher than anticipated this morning for corn, but they still remain below the USDA's pace. So that's something to keep up on. China's put a lot of exports on commitments, so we just need to get them to take some of them now. And it could be part of a logistics problem. We're pushing beans out. China just got done with their harvest, right? They've had some quality concerns. Maybe we'll see some exports down the road. Not as hard of a timetable on that as the soybeans, for example, like we talked about. So we really got to keep an eye on China if they're going to cancel any of their sales they've committed to. And then also ethanol. Margins still remain strong. That's supporting basis. Stocks are still low with holiday driving coming around the corner and approaching us soon. Let's watch these production levels. Try to raise or hold at this 110 to 105 every week for million bushels of corn used for ethanol. See if it can hold here, and let's try to get those stocks to build a little bit, and then we can start getting a little bit more concerned. But in the meantime, basis looks pretty supported on the corn side of things.
Mike, spring wheat today, pretty disappointing there. 23 and a half lower, 1026 and a half. And look out to March, May, we are down 16 and a quarter, 14 and a quarter. Was this just a case of profit taking with high levels in spring wheat today, or what are you seeing there?
I've looked at it from a spread perspective over the last few trading sessions. We've really seen Minneapolis under pressure, while winter wheat and the Chicago have been a little bit more firm. And we really saw that today. It was a really accelerated pace of those spreads. So that'll be something to keep an eye on with those. Long Minneapolis versus the Kansas City and the Chicago. They've been unwinding that for like the last 2 weeks now, I think. And that was accelerated today. So that's what I saw. Yeah, not necessarily a whole lot else. There's a lot more global factors at play with the wheat market, but that's what I'm keeping an eye on right now, anyways.
Sure, a lot of shortage of quality milling wheat, of course, and just a
Yep.
lot of things to consider in that wheat market. But interesting to see a little bit of that spread action accelerating today. Just general thoughts here as we near the end of the year. We're going to get into a time, holiday season, where things are generally quiet, choppy. Not going to be probably a whole lot of news out there, barring something unexpected. We're watching South American weather, as you kind of alluded to as well. That's going to become a factor. What would you say to guys and gals who are looking at their marketing now that they're wrapping up harvest? Maybe they got to make some moves here before the end of the calendar year for tax reasons or whatever the case may be. Any general advice or thoughts you'd share with them?
Definitely. Well, look at your usual winter checklists, I guess. So the first one's going to be weather, like you said, right? So let's look at the La Nina pattern. Looks like it's going to continue through about that April timeframe. For now, Brazil's looking fine. Argentina's still a little bit rougher. So continue to watch that as we move through our winter here in the Midwest. Should be a little bit drier, but a little bit colder. Watch for quick ship bushels opportunities like that to elevators and basis opportunities through this winter time frame, because I do like to get it out of your hands and into the commercial hands a little bit quicker with no carry in the market. So keep an eye on that. So weather's the first thing. Second thing is going to be, it's never too early to shop for the holidays, right? Inflation's picked up and the shelves have been picked over in the stores. Same goes for these markets. Don't be afraid to look out and see what inflation has done to those further out markets in 22, like we've talked about. Don't be afraid to look it over, see what opportunities 2022 corn and soybean futures have for your business at this time. Because whether or not I think the market is going to go up or down, it really doesn't matter. Just look at what opportunities are out there. And there's some pretty good ones already with where those futures are sitting and those extreme premiums that they've put in those markets further out. You could get $5 corn for 3 years now. I mean, not a lot of history that you can lock those prices in. So take a look at that.
Well, Mike Miner with Professional Ag Marketing, our guest today here on Market Talk for this Monday. Mike, let's talk livestock a little bit. Today was pretty subdued, pretty quiet, mixed action in both cattle and hogs. But I know cattle feedlots, they're jumping with joy a little bit, it seems.
Yeah.
Looking at what Packers purchased last week, and they procured, a little over three-quarters of them for nearby delivery. So, I mean, this cash market, it sounds like and looks like we have a potential to add even a little more to it here this week. What are your thoughts of what you saw on Monday?
Seasonally, we're in the right time of the year for this to be happening, right? So I think that's one good fundamental thing to look back on at this time of the year. It's not going against any unusual trends. We've got some pretty decent prices out there. A lot of people are looking for a little bit more for their fat cattle. And on the cash side of things, we've seen some great developments. Like you said, got a good trend under our belt. And for product values, we're continuing to see a higher trend there once again after that bottomed, getting into this holiday season. Some really nice things lining up for the live cattle side of things. Feeders, so we'll see what happens there with we're pretty friendly on the live cattle side of things, but corn is obviously in question with that as well. So let's see what feeder prices have to do here going forward, but we could see an uptick in that as well, which could be worrisome.
Well, I think as well as we look at just general beef demand and pork demand domestically and on the export front, with this time of year, the holiday season, COVID, inflation, I know all of that is going to be playing into what we see as well throughout not only cattle, but on the hog side as well, Mike.
Definitely.
Let's look at hogs. Let's look a little closer at the hog market here today. Again, kind of a mixed bag there. Hogs, we have taken it on the chin. We're trying to kind of rally back. We just, I don't know. I've heard a few varying opinions on this hog market and its direction. What is your opinion and your thoughts of what we're seeing?
We're seeing some nice movement in those further out months. Like if you take a look at the December today, it's kind of consolidated towards that 20-day moving average, been more sideways. Not real surprising there on that one, holding near 75. The further out months, like even out to just April, I mean, 85, 70, we've really put a lot of money on that here real recently and seeing some nice acceleration. So we're still seeing some nice values out there. And when corn was getting beat up there for a little bit, we saw some nice crush opportunities. So that's something to continue to look at. But when corn's moving higher like this, that puts a little bit of a damper on that opportunity. So those further out months, great opportunities. Still look at rolling some of those short Desis out there on a setback, and just keep an eye on spreads. I'd say there should be some decent opportunities there coming forward.
Mike, any thoughts on outside markets? Anything you're watching there? Crude oil, stocks, you name it. Anything you're watching?
Yeah, crude oil for one, that's had a big impact, I believe, on the corn market as of late. And once you start getting below 80, it kind of scares me a little bit. So keep an eye on that. And we've been flirting around that area for some time. I feel like it's gonna have to give up one way or another. It's either going to 100 or it's going to 50, right? We got to see where this is going to react at this price level. So that's one thing I'm looking at in the short term. And then the equities too. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about what the future is, a lot of talk about these growth stocks. It seems a little shaky there. We've needed to see a little bit more of a setback. We saw that 5% real recently. Where are these funds going to go through this time frame with inflation? If we start to see a little bit of a pullback or a major pullback in the equities, we could see some more funds pull into the commodity markets. And something like wheat, where we're sitting, kind of closer to that 2012 type level with spring wheat near $11. Oh wait, we went to 24 when we had some massive funds pile in that thing. So just keep an eye on that if we have some really interesting outside market influences going around. Otherwise, just like everybody else, inflation, man.
Inflation, definitely. I think
Yeah.
that's something we're gonna be talking about for a while. Mike,
Yep.
we appreciate the time and the insight as always. If folks need a little help with their marketing, I know you and the team there at Professional Ag Marketing can help them out. What's the easiest way to get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, give us a call at 507-449-2030. We're located in Laverne, Minnesota, or in Sheldon, Iowa, or in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, over there in Mechanicsville. So thank you for your time today.
Hey, of course, we appreciate the time. Mike Miner with Professional Ag Marketing. Thanks for joining us on Market Talk here for this Monday, November 15th. Find us online, markettalkag.com. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great afternoon.